for tuning into Bartender Administration with the blends of the virtual world. My name is Joe Schofield, and over the course of this syllabus we're going to be discussing a number of skills and a number of topics that we don't really find too often in the bartending side of the industry, but skills that you'd more commonly find in the corporate side of business. It's my hope that you can understand these skills, take them away and learn them in the comfort of your own home. And each module comes with downloadable content that you can utilise in the workplace. Today's virtual seminar is all about presentation skills. So we're going to go through a number of different skills that will help you deliver engaging presentations for different audiences. Whether that's with the language that you use, your body language, which is something that we touched on earlier in the communication module, even your tone of voice, and the way that you deliver this message. I'd like to be completely honest with you here. Presenting really doesn't come naturally to me. It was something that I absolutely hated doing at school, was being asked to stand up in the middle of a classroom and deliver a presentation on something I've worked on. But this skill is incredibly important to our day-to-day life. When you're presenting, it's certainly a daunting experience, and I personally still get nervous. It's something that I do almost on a daily basis, whether I am, working in an activation with a spirit brand or even presenting a concept deck for a project that I've been working on. Over the past couple of years, I've probably done 100 different talks in different countries, different locations, all about different topics, and I think it is a very human response to still feel nervous and still have that sense of anticipation before you are going on stage. With the presentations that I've done, sometimes it can just be in front of a couple of people where I'm running through a concept deck, or the largest audience that I presented to was 2,000 people for an activation that I did in Switzerland, and no matter whether I am presenting in front of 2,000 or 2 people, I still have a little bit of nervousness about me because it's something that really doesn't come that natural to me. Whenever I do speak to people that are even a little bit more accomplished in public speaking or presenting, you often find that they still get nervous as well. I'm continually trying to self-improve on this skill. I do spend a lot of time reading books on the matter, online sources, asking other speakers for little tips and tricks to see if there's anything that I can do to continue to personally develop about the matter, as I understand that it's an incredibly important skill to be able to have and utilise in the workplace. So presenting is something we would do on a daily basis, and it's not just defined to boardrooms or pitches. It's something that we actually do on a daily basis, and it could be as simple as a guest coming to the bar, wanting to understand a little bit more about the venue, wanting to understand a little bit more about the cocktail menu, or perhaps even a spirit category. That is a form of presenting. There are 5 main different types of presentations. The first one is to inform people. That we could consider this briefing. We're informing the team of information that they need to know for later in service. Perhaps you are informing a client about a product or a project that you've been working on. A majority of hospitality venues have perhaps weekly or even monthly meetings with the whole team. And this is an opportunity to inform them about the success of the business, what challenges there are, is there any opportunity here for you to be able to motivate and pick out a member of the team that's been doing exceptionally well. And that is a style of an informative presentation. You can also use a presentation to educate. Perhaps you are educating the team on a certain spirit category or a cocktail history. Educational presentations are very important too, and you can show people a new way of thinking or a new process that they'll need to use in their day-to-day life. Using presentation skills to persuade is an incredible skill, because not only are you able to show people your way of thinking, but also you have an opportunity to show people in a position of authority that you may be eligible for a promotion. You can show people your worth, and this doesn't just have to be obviously in a formal environment, but this can be something you can do on a daily basis. Perhaps you've come across an issue that you need to solve and work through together as a team. Using that presentation skill enables you to really look at things from a wider picture and understand different elements and different opinions of other people. And then once you have that power to be able to bring people together and demand their attention, you can really start to work through problems and solve them. Last but not least, presentations can also be used to inspire people. You can stand up on stage and deliver a keynote speech and inspire people to have a feeling or share an emotion. Perhaps you even can inspire them to have a new idea or create something unique. So there are the 5 main types of presentations, and presentation doesn't have to be something that you do on stage in front of a large audience. It becomes something that can be quite small and quite intimate with you and another person, making sure that you can present and get across your thoughts and your ideas can really help you on a daily basis. So with any presentation, it's important that you know your audience, and we touched on this in the communication module, that when you understand and know a little bit more about the person that you're communicating with, you can adapt and you can transform your presentation to be on a level that they would understand and therefore become more impactful to them. Once you understand that audience and you understand who they are and what they are about, you can transform your presentation using your vocabulary, your tone of voice, all things that we covered in communication, to deliver a much more impactful and meaningful presentation. When you are delivering a presentation to somebody, you are going to be taking this person with you on a journey, and it's always important to make sure that you know what the objectives are. That way you can really tailor this presentation to them. You need to understand what you are trying to achieve from giving this presentation. There are other slightly less traditional forms of presentation. It doesn't just have to be stood on a stage with a microphone presenting to a couple of hundred people. Presentation can be something that you do on a daily basis, communicating with a colleague. You need to inspire and inform your team about going into a service or a challenge. You need to make sure that they're on board with you. A presentation that we've all done is in an interview process. This is an opportunity for you to present yourself and demonstrate your value and why you are the right person for that role. Perhaps you have a new member of the team come on board and they need some training. They need a demonstration of how to use a specific machine. They need a demonstration of how to make a latte. This is an opportunity for you to really practice and hone in on your presentation skills. So with this presentation module, there's always going to be a couple of links that naturally cross over with the communication module. And one of the most important forms of presentation that I think you must master is the art of an elevator pitch. So the elevator pitch takes its name from the concept of being in an elevator with somebody, and you need to demonstrate what this concept or this project or even yourself is about within such a short period of time. And it can be such a powerful presentation. It can also be extremely challenging, trying to condense something you may have worked on your entire life into a very short, concise segment and describe what that concept's about. An elevator pitch for a cocktail bar may be, we're an Italian-influenced classic cocktail bar. An example for an elevator pitch for your venue might be, we're a 1920s speakeasy. An elevator pitch, in essence, is trying to get across your concept in as fewer words as possible. So when you are delivering a presentation, there are so many different styles that you can use for delivery. There's so many different approaches. Some of the great public speakers that you can view online have completely different and unique identities when they approach this subject. And for you to deliver a great presentation, it really has to be in a way that you are comfortable with and in a style that is unique and personal to you. It can be quite difficult to watch sometimes when you're watching somebody deliver a presentation and they are trying to force characteristics which isn't really them, and I think that can be very clear when that's happening. But everybody has their strengths, and I think it's important to play to those strengths when you are delivering a presentation. It can be such an incredibly daunting experience standing in front of a couple of hundred people in the audience, and you have perhaps a very complicated presentation to deliver in terms of statistics, facts. There's a number of things that can make this presentation very difficult for you to deliver. But one of the things that's always helped me, and this is from speaking to people in the audience, speaking to other people that are, great public speakers and recognised for their skill in that area, is that you find that the whole audience wants you to do well. They want you to succeed. These people know how difficult it is standing up in front of an audience and having to deliver and communicate a presentation. They want nothing more than for you to do well. So there are 8 main styles of delivering a presentation. The first one is a visual style. This is using slides to complement your wording and your communication to really get across a stronger message. This style can be quite hard to engage your audience, as perhaps they're spending time focusing on what you're saying and also focusing on the screen behind you where you do have the visual slides. But for great public speakers, this can be an incredibly strong way to deliver a presentation, especially if that sort of person is a bit of a visionary. If they are a natural storyteller, this can be a great way to get across that message. This style can be incredibly helpful if you are delivering to a large audience, especially if you've got a couple of hundred people. People will still be able to see the screen and the core of your content even if they're sat at the back of the audience. Next, we have the freeform style. This is basically presenting in the form of storytelling, which some people find very naturally. They can ad-lib, they can just roll with it. It's something where they really get across their message with the power of storytelling. This freeform style is great for the elevator pitch, which we touched on, and also for networking events. Next, we have the instructor style. This is good for when you want to deliver quite complex messages. It's also great for you to be able to educate and inform people. This style is often backed up with the use of highly visual, impactful images. It's a great way to present if you've got a lot of content, and also perhaps if you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable with the act of presentation. Then we have the coach style. The coach style uses role play and listening as a form of presentation. It's utilised best by strong presenters, and especially if the audience feels a little bit nervous or at ease, bringing the audience into this process and into the presentation can really help everybody in the room. Then we have the storytelling style. This is the way that the presenter uses stories to be able to make a connection with their audience. This style is particularly powerful if the presenter is naturally charismatic, and it really helps to bring those stories to life. But on the flip side of that, it's quite hard for the audience to be able to understand what the presentation is about. So if you are adopting this style, you need to make sure that you are going back to the points that you mentioned and you are getting your points across. I would suggest if you are new to presenting, perhaps this style isn't necessarily for you. They tend to be done by people that are much more well versed in communication and presentation skills, but it can be a very effective form if you have a little bit more time on your hands. Next, we have the connector style, and this form of presentation is all about creating that emotional connection with your audience. Perhaps you encourage questions and answer sessions in between the topics or points that you're talking about, and you're really trying to keep that audience naturally engaged. This can be an extremely impactful tool as a presenter, as you're trying to let the audience know how you are the same, how you are similar. And another way that you can do that throughout your presentation is by encouraging an audience reaction, bringing them in, asking if they have any questions, answering those questions. And you really want to try and engage them as much as you can by creating an emotional response and a reaction from the audience. So the next couple of presentation styles are named after the people that created them. So the Lessig style was created by Lawrence Lessig, who was a professor at Harvard Law School. And his approach was really flying through slides with no longer than 15 seconds on each slide. And if there was ever any text on a slide, it would be synchronized with the words that he's saying. This style is great for large crowds, especially if they may not have the chance to be able to hear effectively. It gives you an opportunity to really engage a large audience through the use of images and words on a screen. So last but not least, the Takahashi style was developed by Takahashi-san, a Japanese professor, and this is the use of very minimal, very bold text on slides, and this is the best way to deliver a presentation for something that you want to be memorable and concise. So there are a number of tips that you can utilise to become a better presenter. And first of all, understanding and knowing your audience. You can tailor your presentation to be more impactful and emotional to your audience. If you're going to be using complex vocabulary, you need to make sure that the people that you're presenting to understand that vocabulary, they understand that jargon, they understand those abbreviations. If not, you need to spend some time to define what those words mean. I've always found it very important to take the time to explain those specific words. And if I am using something a little bit more complex, I like to use that word a number of times. It really helps the audience to register the word and that meaning of the word, and they become familiar with it. They might even be inclined to continue to use that word in their own vocabulary as they truly understand the meaning. It's always very important when you set out to deliver a presentation or even design the presentation at the start to understand your objectives. What are you trying to achieve here? What do you want the audience to feel? What are you trying to do? You're trying to educate them, you're trying to inform them, you're trying to motivate them. Once you have your objectives and your goals in mind, it's a great way to work backwards, and that's when you can take them on that journey to get them to where you want them to be. So when you are delivering a presentation, you want to make sure that you know the material. So some people this can come very easy, especially if they are, versed in telling stories, they are extremely charismatic, but it's always important to remain completely factual if you can. Some people may even challenge you on this point. If you say something might not necessarily be true, you may become challenged by the audience and you will lose all credibility as a speaker. I think it's important as well to be able to tell your story with a bit of flair, whether that's the use of humour, through storytelling, through videos, through imagery. I always like to make sure that I'm keeping my audience as engaged as possible. It's a human response really to, lose interest over the course of an hour. If I am delivering a longer presentation, I will make sure that I have opportunities to break up the monotony. The use of videos, people don't really have to listen. They can just sit there, watch, enjoy, and hopefully understand. I think sometimes you have to realise that it can be quite difficult being sat in the audience. It can actually be quite exhausting on the brain. So I personally think that any presentation should be around the half an hour to 45-minute mark. Anything longer, the use of breaks is a great way to be able to capture your audience once again. If you are delivering a presentation that may have different media, it's always important to test the equipment. There is absolutely nothing worse than standing up on stage, and it's happened to me before, and I've not tested the video or even the sound, and it's just a huge flop. There's nothing worse than having that feeling of disappointment, especially if you need to carry on and try and motivate or inspire people. You've already failed from the offset. It only takes a couple of moments to be able to test the sound, test the video, just run through that presentation one last time to make sure that you are on the right path for success. Making sure that you spend time practicing is incredibly important. You want to make sure that you know the material and you feel comfortable and confident to deliver it. You don't want to stand up on stage and not have that feeling that you know that you can make a success of this. There's so many different ways that you can practice. I personally like to say my presentation out loud, go through it a number of times. I know people that have small cues or prompts and they only need a couple of words to be able to inspire them and be able to keep talking. I personally prefer to make sure that my presentation is verbatim. So verbatim basically means that you're going through the presentation word for word. I find that my presentation becomes a lot more natural and a lot more integrated and a lot more seamless if I've already got a number of key phrases and key quotes that I can rely on to utilise in my presentation. I'm very much of the mindset, fail to prepare, prepare to fail, and I like to make sure I've done everything that I can to make sure that what I'm going to do will become successful. As a presenter, you should give opportunity for questions. Perhaps sometimes people don't necessarily understand the content, or perhaps they miss something that was crucial to your overall presentations, and as I mentioned previously, that you should go back to that point and make sure you are using the same words continually throughout the presentation, and you're going back to your points throughout the presentation so people can really take away the core message of what you are delivering. When you do open up the floor to questions, don't be put off if there aren't any questions. Certain cultures may feel a little bit differently about asking questions. They may not want to look like they've lost face or don't understand the subject material in front of their peers. Perhaps you've given one of the most dedicated and impactful presentations that they've ever seen, but they may still not feel comfortable in asking questions. It's always great to stay around after a presentation for 10-15 minutes, as you often find that people who didn't want to put their hand up and ask a question in front of a group of people will come to you and they'll ask you a question that's a little bit more personal to them. When you are delivering a presentation, it's important to speak clearly and utilise pauses. When you use that pause, it gives people time to let the information sink in, or even have a moment to think about what you really just said. Obviously, you may be delivering this presentation to people from a different language. It might not be the first language, and the clearer you speak, the more you can get your message across. When you are presenting, this may sound incredibly obvious, but you want to focus on your breathing. It's not very often that in life we spend, perhaps 45 minutes talking continually. And if you are mic'd up, you do have a microphone on, you can very much hear your breaths across the room. You want to make sure that you are calm, you're collected, you're breathing in and you're breathing out slowly, maintaining a steady rhythm of breathing. When you are presenting, it is important sometimes to state the obvious and recap on your points. It can be very easy for an audience member or the person that's listening to you to miss the core message of what you're trying to get across. And finally, when you are presenting, be yourself. Don't try to be anything that you're not. You have certain strengths, and you should utilise those strengths when you are delivering a message. So, we've gone through a number of different presentation styles. There's a couple of tips that should help you become a better presenter. And one thing that I'm always very conscious of when I'm stood on stage or presenting to somebody is that I am representing my own personal brand, which you can learn a little bit more about in the next virtual seminar.